The night sky above Montana was clear and perfect for stargazing. Greg Wilson sat alone in the small observatory, his eyes tired from staring at screens for hours. At 42, with gray starting to show in his beard, Greg had left his job at NASA 5 years ago for this quiet life watching the stars. Another boring night, he said to himself, sipping cold coffee. Then he saw it. A pattern in the radio signals that wasn't normal. Greg leaned forward, adjusting his glasses. The pattern repeated, too regular to be natural and too complex to be random. "What are you?" he whispered. For 3 nights in a row, the signal came back stronger. On the 4th morning, Greg finally called his boss. "Dr. Kelly, I found something you need to see." Susan Kelly was a short woman with a no-nonsense attitude. She crossed her arms as Greg showed her the recordings. Probably just equipment problems. "Wilson, run the tests again." But the signal only grew stronger. Within days, other observatories around the world picked up the same pattern. The internet buzzed with theories. News channels interviewed experts who argued about what it could mean. Greg wasn't surprised when government agents arrived at the small observatory. A tall man in a black suit introduced himself as Agent Powell. "Mr. Wilson, we need you to come with us. Your discovery has gotten attention at the highest levels." The next day, Greg found himself in Washington, D.C., sitting in a room with scientists, military officers, and government officials. A woman in a navy blue suit stood at the front. "I'm Director Carol Bennett from NASA. As most of you know, we're receiving what appears to be an alien signal. Yesterday it changed." She played a recording. The mathematical pattern now ended with a clear message in several Earth languages. "We come with questions. Prepare for arrival in 7 days." The room erupted in voices. Someone shouted about defense systems. Another person demanded evacuation plans. "Quiet." Director Bennett raised her hand. "The president is forming a welcome committee. Mr. Wilson, since you discovered the signal first, you'll join the team." Greg blinked in surprise. "Me? I'm just an observatory technician." "You're the first human contact they reached out to. That might matter." The next week moved in a blur. Scientists tried to send return messages. Military forces went on high alert. Religious leaders made speeches about cosmic brotherhood or coming judgment. Ordinary people either panicked or celebrated. Greg went through intensive briefings. He met the other team members. Olivia Martinez, a linguistics professor with kind eyes and a quick smile. Alan Grant, a physicist who talked too fast. Frank Robinson, a career diplomat with perfect posture. And Captain Lisa Wright, a military observer who rarely spoke. "Remember," Frank told them during their final meeting, "we represent all of humanity. Be respectful but cautious. Don't make promises. Don't show fear." On the 7th day, the world watched as radar detected an object entering Earth's atmosphere. It moved too smoothly to be natural, slowing down and choosing its path. New Zealand had been selected as neutral territory for the landing. Greg and the team waited on a grassy field surrounded by security forces keeping the press and public at a safe distance. "Look," Olivia pointed up. A silver object shaped like a teardrop descended from the clouds. It made no sound as it lowered itself to the ground about 50 yards away. The surface of the ship shimmered like water in sunlight. "Stay calm," Frank whispered, though his own voice shook. A seam appeared in the side of the vessel, widening into a doorway. Light spilled out and a figure stood in the opening. The alien walked down a ramp that extended from the ship. She, at least she looked female to human eyes, moved with unusual grace as if Earth's gravity was stronger than she was used to. Greg's first thought was how almost human she appeared. She had 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head with facial features in familiar places. But the differences were clear too. Her skin had a slight blue tint with patterns that shifted like oil on water. Her eyes were larger than human eyes, solid violet with no visible pupils. She stood nearly 7 feet tall with a slender build. She wore something like a silver bodysuit that seemed to move with her thoughts rather than her body. The alien stopped 10 feet away from the team. Her head tilted slightly as she studied them. "I am Zara," she said in perfect English, her voice musical with strange undertones. I speak for the Viridian Collective. Frank stepped forward and introduced himself and the team. We welcome you to Earth. We are honored by your visit and eager to learn your purpose. Zara's gaze moved from person to person, lingering longest on Greg. You are the one who first heard our call, she said. Greg nodded, surprised she could identify him. Yes, I'm Greg Wilson. The stars guided me to you, Greg Wilson. Her mouth formed what might have been a smile. Your world is young but promising. Frank quickly regained control of the conversation. We have prepared accommodations and an agenda for diplomatic discussions. No agenda is needed, Zara said. We came with questions. One question to begin. The team exchanged glances. This matched their expectations. Aliens would want to know about Earth's resources, technologies, political systems, or military capabilities. We are ready to answer, Frank said confidently. Zara looked at each human again, her gaze penetrating. When she spoke, her question silenced everyone. In your species' history of development, at what point did you choose cruelty over kindness as your evolutionary advantage? No one moved. Greg felt his heart beat faster. Frank's diplomatic smile froze. Lisa's hand twitched toward her hidden weapon. Alan blinked rapidly, his mind racing for scientific answers. Olivia's linguistic training made her notice the precise word choice, choose, as if it had been a conscious decision. Greg suddenly understood they had prepared for the wrong conversation entirely. The aliens hadn't come to talk about resources or territory or technology. They had come to understand something more fundamental about humanity itself, and how could they answer a question they had never asked themselves? We will need time to discuss your question, Frank finally said, his voice strained. Zara nodded as if she had expected this response. Time is reasonable. I will wait. She looked directly at Greg again. But I would speak with the star listener again. As the team walked back to their temporary base, none of them spoke. The alien's question hung in the air between them, heavier than any greeting or threat could have been. Greg knew this was just the beginning. He looked back once at Zara, who still watched him. He had a feeling her questions would only get harder from here. The team gathered in their meeting room at the base camp. No one had spoken much on the walk back from the landing site. Frank paced back and forth, his face tight with worry. Lisa stood by the window, watching Zara's ship in the distance. Alan typed furiously on his tablet, searching for scientific explanations. Olivia made notes about the aliens' language patterns. Greg sat quietly, thinking about the question that had shocked them all. Frank finally broke the silence. This is a trap. She's trying to make us look bad. It's a philosophical question, Olivia suggested. Maybe in their culture it's a normal greeting. Alan looked up from his tablet. It's based on false assumptions. We didn't choose our evolutionary path. Natural selection isn't a choice. Lisa frowned. What if this is how they judge if we're worth keeping around? They all turned to Greg, who hadn't spoken yet. What do you think, Wilson? Frank asked. She seems interested in you specifically. Greg rubbed his beard slowly. I think maybe she's just curious, not judging, just asking. Frank snorted. Don't be naive. This is first contact diplomacy. Everything has meaning. We should answer defensively, Lisa suggested. Make it clear humans aren't naturally cruel. We should correct her scientific misunderstanding, Alan insisted. As they argued, Greg thought about Zara's eyes when she asked the question. There wasn't anger or judgment there. Just interest, maybe even hope. What if we just tell the truth? Greg said suddenly. Everyone stopped talking and stared at him. The truth? Frank repeated. Which is what exactly? Greg stood up. That we never chose. That we've always had both cruelty and kindness in us. That our whole history is about the struggle between these two sides of ourselves. Frank shook his head. Too risky. We can't admit to being cruel. She'll report back that we're dangerous. If she's studied us at all, she already knows our history, Greg pointed out. Maybe honesty is what she's testing, not our nature itself. The argument continued late into the night. In the end, they agreed to let Frank handle the official response as the trained diplomat. They would meet Zara again the next morning. Under the bright New Zealand sun, the team again faced the alien visitor. Zara stood exactly where she had been left, as if she hadn't moved all night. "Have you considered my question?" she asked. Frank stepped forward with his diplomatic smile. "Esteemed visitor, we appreciate your interest in our species. However, I must respectfully point out that your question contains an incorrect assumption. Humans did not choose cruelty as an evolutionary advantage. Our development, like all life on Earth, was shaped by natural processes without conscious choice." Zara's head tilted slightly. "Interesting. You deny agency in your own development?" Frank's smile faltered. "It's not denial. It's scientific fact." "Perhaps I misunderstood," Zara said. "Let me rephrase. When did you recognize the pattern of choosing cruelty over kindness in your historical decisions?" Frank's face reddened. "Again, with respect, we reject the premise. Humanity has always valued kindness and cooperation. Our greatest achievements come from working together. Yet your dominant historical patterns show otherwise," Zara stated calmly. "Your resources flow to warfare before healing, to walls before bridges. This is not judgment. I seek understanding." The conversation was going badly. Lisa tensed visibly. Alan began a technical explanation about game theory and evolutionary psychology that even the other humans couldn't follow. Greg watched Zara's reactions. Her color patterns shifted subtly with each response, especially when Frank became defensive. She wasn't getting what she wanted. Without planning to speak, Greg suddenly stepped forward. "May I try to answer?" Frank shot him a warning look, but Zara's attention immediately shifted to Greg. "Please do, star listener." Greg took a deep breath. "We never made that choice consciously. We evolved both traits simultaneously and have been struggling with the balance ever since. Our greatest achievements and deepest failures both stem from this internal conflict." The alien's skin rippled with color. "Explain." "The same creativity that lets us write beautiful music also lets us design weapons. The same loyalty that makes us protect our families can make us fight other groups. The same drive that helps us build cities can make us destroy forests." Greg spoke slowly, choosing simple words for complex ideas. "And how do you manage this conflict?" Zara asked, moving closer to Greg. "Not very well, honestly," Greg admitted. "We create rules and laws. We teach our children to be kind. We tell stories about heroes who choose the right path, but we fail often, then we try again." Zara was silent for a long moment. The other team members looked nervous, but Greg held the alien's gaze. "This struggle, it causes you pain?" Zara finally asked. "Yes. But it also defines us. Without it, we wouldn't be human." Zara's skin flashed with bright patterns. "Fascinating. In my culture, we would call this dancing with your shadow. Few species recognize their own darkness as you do." Frank quickly stepped in. "We've prepared many briefings about Earth's positive achievements if you'd like to learn more." "No," Zara said, still looking at Greg. "I wish to continue this conversation, but only with the star listener." A tense silence fell over the group. "That's not protocol," Frank began. But Director Bennett, who had been watching from a distance, approached. "We can arrange supervised conversations," she said. "If that's acceptable?" Zara nodded. "Yes. I have many more questions for Greg Wilson." As Otzi noted, they walked back to the base. Lisa whispered to Greg, "What just happened? Why you?" Greg shook his head. "I don't know, I just told the truth." "Well, something you said interested her," Olivia noted. "This could be good for all of us." Frank was less pleased. "Just remember you're representing Earth now, Wilson. Don't make promises or apologize for our species." Greg nodded, but his mind was already on tomorrow's conversation. Zara had seen something in him, some connection she couldn't find with the others. He wondered what questions would come next, and if he would have any answers. Back in his small room, Greg looked out the window at the silver ship glowing under the stars. For the first time since the signal appeared on his screen, he felt something beyond fear or confusion. He felt curious. The next morning, Greg sat in a small white room set up for his meeting with Zara. 2 security cameras watched from corners. A table with water and some fruit separated the 2 chairs. Director Bennett had given him clear instructions. Answer honestly, but remember security concerns. Don't reveal military locations or technology details. If you feel uncomfortable, just say the code word Starlight, and we'll end the meeting. Greg nodded, though he doubted Zara had come across the galaxy to learn about Earth's weapons. When Zara entered, her skin rippled with blue and purple patterns. She moved with that same strange grace as if Earth's gravity was a new experience. She sat across from Greg, her large violet eyes studying him. "Thank you for agreeing to speak with me alone," she said. "I'm not sure why you wanted to talk just to me," Greg replied. "The others know more about science and politics." Zara's head tilted. "They know facts. You understand feelings. You answered my question truthfully, without fear or pride." Greg smiled slightly. "I just said what I thought. This is rare among all species, not just humans." Zara leaned forward. "Tell me, Greg Wilson, how do you live with this internal conflict, this struggle between kindness and cruelty?" Greg thought for a moment. "We build connections. Family, friends, communities. These bonds help us choose kindness more often than not. Yet you have no direct mental connection, no sharing of thoughts. No, we're separate beings. We communicate through words, expressions, touch." Zara seemed troubled by this. "In the Viridian Collective, we evolved from hive species. We always sense each other's thoughts and feelings. To be so alone in your mind." She shuddered slightly. "It must be terrifying." "Sometimes it is," Greg admitted, "but it also gives us privacy, independence. We value those things." For hours, they talked about the differences between their species. Zara explained how the Viridians had evolved from creatures like Earth's, bees or ants, but developed individual consciousness while keeping their mental connections. They couldn't lie to each other or hide feelings. Violence against another Viridian was physically painful to the attacker. "This is why your question about cruelty confused us," Greg explained. "For your people, kindness is automatic. For us, it's a choice we have to make every day." "Tell me about this choice in your own life," Zara requested. Greg hadn't expected to share personal stories, but he found himself telling Zara about his childhood. How his grandmother had raised him after his parents died in an accident. How she had worked 2 jobs to give him a good life even when her health was failing. That was kindness, he said. Sacrifice for someone else. Then he told her about the bullies in school who had beaten him up for being poor and smart. That was cruelty. Hurting someone weaker just because you can. Zara's skin darkened as she listened. "And both experiences shaped you?" "Yes. My grandmother taught me compassion. The bullies taught me to stand up for others who couldn't defend themselves." Day after day, their conversations continued. Greg explained concepts Zara found fascinating: privacy, competition, romantic love, artistic expression. She struggled most with understanding loneliness. "How do you bear it? Being cut off from others' thoughts?" "We find ways to connect," Greg said. "Through art, music, stories, through shared experiences." "Show me," Zara requested. With permission from Director Bennett, Greg began bringing things to their meetings. He played music on a small speaker, everything from classical to rock to jazz. Zara's skin changed colors with the rhythms. He showed her paintings and photographs. He read her poetry. "These are all attempts to bridge the gap between minds," he explained, "to help others feel what we feel." One day, Zara asked about human families. Greg showed her pictures of his grandmother and told stories about holidays and birthdays. "You lived with only one elder? Not a community?" Zara seemed sad. "That's common for humans, small family units. Among Viridians, younglings are raised by the entire community. No one is ever alone. As the weeks passed, Greg realized he was learning as much about humans by explaining them as Zara was. He'd never thought deeply about why humans behaved as they did, until he had to explain it to someone who saw the world completely differently. During their 7th meeting, Greg finally asked the question that had been bothering him. Why did your people contact Earth? There must be many planets with life in the galaxy. Zara was quiet for a moment, her skin patterns slowing. We have met 27 spacefaring species, she finally said. Most fall into familiar patterns. Some are hive minds like us. Some are predator species that never outgrew violence. Some are peaceful plant-based life that values harmony above all. She leaned forward. But humans? You are unique in our experience. You contain all possibilities at once. You create beautiful art and terrible weapons. You love deeply and hate fiercely. You build and destroy with equal passion. Greg frowned. That doesn't sound like a good thing. It is neither good nor bad. It is fascinating. You have something the rest of us lack. True choice. True inner conflict that drives you forward. As Greg walked back to his quarters that evening, he thought about Zara's words. Humans had always seen their internal struggles as a weakness. The constant battle between selfishness and altruism, between fear and courage, between hatred and love. But to Zara, this was what made humans special. Later that night, Greg sat outside looking at the stars. Director Bennett joined him. How are the talks going? She asked. Good, I think. We're learning about each other. Has she revealed why they're really here? What they want from us? Greg shook his head. I don't think they want anything from us. At least, not what we expected. Everyone wants something, Wilson. Maybe. Greg looked up at the sky. Or maybe they just want to understand us. As he watched the stars, Greg wondered what tomorrow's conversation would bring. For the first time, he was beginning to see humanity through alien eyes. Not as a flawed, violent species, but as something unique. In the universe, beings who could choose their path for better or worse, and somehow that made him proud to be human. 3 weeks after Zara's arrival, Greg woke to sirens. He rushed outside to see security personnel running toward the alien ship. His heart sank as he saw smoke rising in the distance. What's happening? He asked a passing soldier. Attack on. The visitor, the man replied without stopping. Greg ran toward Zara's ship. Director Bennett intercepted him halfway there. Wilson, stop. It's not safe. Is Zara okay? Greg demanded. Bennett's face was grim. She's alive. Some extremist group calling themselves Earth First tried to breach her ship. They wanted to capture her for her technology. I need to see her, Greg insisted. That's not a good idea. The military is handling. She trusts me, Greg interrupted. Let me help before this ruins everything. After a moment, Bennett nodded. Fine, but stay with your security detail. When Greg reached the landing site, he found chaos. Armed guards surrounded Zara's ship. Medical teams treated injured soldiers, and Zara stood outside her damaged vessel, her skin flashing angry red patterns. She turned as Greg approached. Your people attacked me, she said, her voice lacking its usual musical quality. Not my people, Greg said. A small group of extremists. Most humans condemn what they did. Yet they came from your society. They are part of humanity. Greg couldn't argue with that. Yes, this is what I meant about our inner conflict. Some humans choose fear and violence, but most want peaceful contact with you. Zara studied him. 3 of my crew are injured. My communication equipment is damaged. Greg felt cold fear. This could end everything. Will you leave now, to his surprise, Zara's color shifted to a calmer blue. No, this presents an opportunity. An opportunity to observe how humans handle conflict among themselves, to see which side of your nature prevails. Over the next days, Greg watched as Zara's prediction proved true. The attack created a worldwide response. Leaders from every major nation condemned the violence. Thousands of people gathered outside the security zone with signs welcoming the aliens. Scientists and engineers offered to help repair Zara's communication equipment, but there was also darkness. Some media outlets used the attack to spread fear. Politicians on election campaigns warned about alien influence. New anti-alien groups formed, claiming Earth needed protection from cosmic invaders. Greg became Zara's guide through this human drama. With permission from director Bennett, he showed Zara news reports and social media reactions. He explained how humans were divided in their response. "This happens with every major event," he told her. "Some respond with fear, others with hope. Some look for someone to blame, others look for ways to help." Zara absorbed it all with intense interest. "And which group usually wins?" Greg smiled, sadly. "Neither, completely. We make progress, then slide backward, then forward again. That's human history." One evening, Greg took Zara to watch a sunset over the New Zealand mountains. Security kept their distance to give them privacy. "In your stories," Zara said suddenly, "humans often dream of reaching the stars." "Yes, it's been our dream for centuries." "Why? What do you hope to find there?" Greg thought about it. "Maybe answers, maybe new beginnings, or maybe just the joy of discovery. Not conquest, not resources. For some, yes, but for most, it's something deeper. A need to see what's beyond our world." Zara was quiet for a moment. "The Viridian Collective has visited thousands of worlds. We have technology you cannot imagine, yet we find ourselves stagnant." "What do you mean?" "We have peace. We have plenty. We have perfect understanding between individuals, but we have stopped growing." Her colors dimmed. "Without conflict, without struggle, creativity fades." Greg was stunned. The advanced aliens were envious of humans? Their conversation was interrupted by Director Bennett's arrival. "We've tracked down the group responsible for the attack," she said. "They're being brought to justice, and the United Nations Security Council is meeting tomorrow to discuss increased protection for your ship." "I wish to attend this meeting," Zara said. Bennett hesitated. "It's not standard procedure to allow—" "I insist," Zara interrupted, "with Greg Wilson as my translator." The next day, Greg found himself in an emergency session of the UN Security Council. World leaders argued about security protocols and international responses to the attack. Some suggested moving Zara to a more secure location. Others wanted to limit her contact with civilians. As the debate grew heated, Zara suddenly stood. The room fell silent as she walked to the center of the chamber. "I have been observing your response to conflict," she said, her voice echoing in the quiet room. "I see your laws and systems designed to control your worst impulses. I see your efforts to build cooperation despite your separate minds. I see your struggle to overcome fear." She looked around at the surprised faces. "But I must ask, if your species recognizes its capacity for both creation and destruction, why do you fear yourselves so deeply?" No one spoke. Greg watched as worldly leaders looked at each other, unsure how to respond. "Your fear limits you," Zara continued. "You build walls against the darkness inside you instead of learning to walk with it. You attempt to eliminate conflict rather than use it as fuel for growth." An older diplomat from Japan finally spoke. "Fear keeps us safe, visitor. History has shown what happens when we do not fear our own capacity for destruction. Yet fear also prevents your potential," Zara replied. "The Viridian Collective has no internal conflict, no darkness to fear, and we have found this is not strength, but weakness." Greg realized then what Zara had been leading toward in all their conversations. The aliens hadn't come to judge humanity's flaws. They had come to study what they lacked themselves, the creative tension of internal struggle. As they left the meeting, Zara turned to Greg. "Your leaders speak of protection and security, but what humanity needs is not more guards against its nature. It needs understanding of its dual self." "That's not easy," Greg said. "Our history is full of times when our darker side won." "Yes, and times when your light prevailed against all odds." Zara's colors brightened. This is what makes you unique among the species we have encountered. This is why we came. That night, as news of Zara's speech spread across the world, Greg wondered what it meant for humanity's future. For the first time, an advanced species was suggesting that our inner conflicts, the very things we thought made us flawed, might actually be our greatest strength. A month after the attack, Zara's ship was repaired. The world had changed in that time. Philosophers, religious leaders, and ordinary people everywhere discussed Zara's question about humanity fearing itself. Some saw it as criticism, others as wisdom. Greg and Zara walked along a beach near the security zone. Their conversations had become deeper, more personal. Greg had shared human achievements that came from internal struggle, music born from pain, art created in times of war, scientific breakthroughs made against all odds. "Tomorrow I must leave," Zara said suddenly. Greg felt a strange sadness. "So soon? My mission is complete. I have learned what I came to understand." "And what was that exactly?" Zara stopped walking, her skin rippling with gentle blues and purples in the sunset light. "I must tell you the true purpose of my visit." She explained that the Viridian Collective had reached an evolutionary dead end. Despite their advanced technology and peaceful society, they had stopped growing. Without internal conflict to drive innovation, without separate minds pushing against each other, they faced slow decline. "We came to Earth not to judge humanity but to learn from your contradictions," Zara said, "to understand how struggle creates strength." Greg nodded slowly. "And did you find what you were looking for?" "Yes, and more." Zara turned to face Greg, directly. "Now I must extend the real purpose of my mission, an invitation." "An invitation?" "Not for all humans, but for selected individuals like you. Those who understand the human condition deeply. We ask you to come with us, to help the Viridian Collective learn how to incorporate beneficial aspects of human duality without losing our empathic nature." Greg stared at her in shock. "You want me to leave Earth? To go with you?" "Yes. To be a teacher. To show us what we lack." Greg's mind raced. The opportunity was beyond anything he had ever imagined. To travel among the stars, to see other worlds. But Earth was his home. His connections, his memories, his humanity itself was rooted here. "Why me?" he asked finally. "Out of all humans?" Zara's colors brightened. "Because when I asked about cruelty and kindness, you didn't defend or deny either. You recognized both as part of your nature, yet you've chosen to be defined by your choices rather than your instincts." She moved closer. "This is what we hope to learn. How to choose growth despite limitations. How to embrace change without fear. And how to find strength in vulnerability." Greg looked out at the ocean, thinking of all he would leave behind. How long would I be gone? Time passes differently for us. What might seem like years to you would be generations for your people. This is not a small thing, I ask. That night, Greg couldn't sleep. He walked outside and looked up at the stars, knowing that somewhere among them were worlds he could visit, civilizations he could help shape. In the morning, as Zara prepared to depart, Greg met her at her ship. World leaders and media had gathered to witness the historic departure. "Have you decided?" Zara asked. Greg took a deep breath. "Yes, I'll come with you." As he said the words, he felt both fear and hope, the very human contradiction that Zara found so fascinating. "There is one condition," he added. "I want to send messages back to Earth, stories of what I learn. Humanity deserves to know what's out there." Zara's skin flashed with bright patterns. "Agreed. Your stories will prepare your people for their own journey among the stars someday." As Greg boarded the ship, he looked back one last time at the world he was leaving. He thought of his grandmother who had taught him kindness, the bullies who had taught him resilience, and all the human connections that had shaped him. He was taking humanity's greatest gift to the stars, our beautiful, terrible contradiction, our endless struggle that somehow against all odds moved us forward. The ship door closed behind him, and humanity's first ambassador to the galaxy began his journey.